Have you ever found yourself as a fearful avoidant craving deep connection, but then as soon as things get really real or people get too close, you feel like you start panicking and even feel a need to pull away? Well, you're not alone because this is the core struggle, one of the very core struggles of a fearful avoidant. And so today we are going to talk about why understanding this matters so much and what really happens if you don't understand what's taking place at a root level. And then we'll talk a little bit about how this often shows up in your relationships, some of the different origins and root causes from childhood, how this may even cause you to sabotage if you're not aware of this happening, and then most importantly, what you can do about it. So here's the first piece, okay? Fearful avoidant attachment styles have these two competing needs. They have this attachment need, okay, this deep need for like love and intimacy and closeness. And fearful avoidants want to deeply connect with people. So much of like the depth of connection piece is that a lot of fearful avoidants feel like only through understanding everything about a person can they really come to trust them. So there's this deep drive to connect in a really profound way, but then there's this avoidant instinct. And this avoidant instinct is really coming from a place of the fearful avoidant fearing losing themselves and fearing being hurt. And the neuroscience behind this is that your nervous system is wired for both hypervigilance and avoidance, which makes closeness feel both safe and unsafe at the same time. And this is very unique to the fearful avoidant attachment style, right? We'll generally see dismissive avoidants constantly stay away from closeness and keep a distance emotionally, physically around their space even. And anxious attachment styles are constantly seeking more closeness, more connection, more proximity. But fearful avoidants have this very competing need component where it's like they want something and they're scared of it simultaneously in a sense. And so how this shows up in relationships is often that in the early stages, before there's any deep attachment bonds formed, you'll find yourself wanting to dive in, wanting to really, push ahead, drive the relationship forward, connect more deeply, make every date the best date ever, make every interaction, really special. But then as soon as you start to really develop deep feelings, fearful avoidants go, wait, now I could be really hurt. And a lot of the roots of this from a childhood experience were a dynamic of feeling like you grew up in an environment where you had some really beautiful moments with love and connection, but some really scary ones. So as an example, if you grew up with a parent who was an alcoholic, some days they might have been in a good mood and loving and extra sweet and kind, and other days they drank too much and they became maybe really harsh, critical, cruel with their words or actions type of figure. And it causes you to have these really competing needs about the same thing. Now, why does this actually matter? Well, the reason this actually matters is because if you don't learn to to work through this as an adult, what you're going to find is that not only do you keep feeling the need to sabotage closeness and relationships, but you're going to move through life from this place of woundedness. You see, so much of what ends up happening is what our past relationships are all about. We project onto our future. We assume the past, right? If you felt abandoned as a child, you keep waiting for the other shoe to drop when it comes to abandonment as an adult. If you felt betrayed as a child, you constantly feel the need to be hypervigilant and suspicious and read between the lines and don't trust that people will stick around. And this sets the foundation and context for roller coaster relationships, right? If you can't trust somebody, the more you love and the more you care, the scarier it becomes, right? The more you're going to feel the internal emotional ups and downs in relationships, because as soon as love gets real, it also becomes threatening. And unfortunately, a lot of how fearful avoidants have been wired to view love and connection is in this dualistic point of view. Love is beautiful and it's terrifying. Love is a great thing and it's threatening. And the more that you see this in your experiences, the more you're going to be hot and cold. But even more than that, even on a personal point of view, the more you're going to go through life internally with this exhaustion, this burnout feature of like, as soon as you get close to people in relationships, this piece kicks in, right? And all of a sudden, the closer you get, even if it's in friendships or co-working relationships, it really can be highly dysregulating. And yet, closeness is going to be a part of our everyday life, right? We're going to have the opportunity for closeness in all relationships. So I want to ask you before we go into like how to break free from this, how to work through this, I want to ask you if you really take a look at this experience, what are some of the costs that you've seen of roller coaster relationships, of confusing love and freedom and thinking that it has to be one or the other, or that these are mutually exclusive concepts. Because the reality is you can have love and freedom at the same time. You can have a loving relationship where both partners really respect and honor each other's freedom. Relationships do not have to be something that shrink you. They can be something that provides support and grow you and allow you to thrive and flourish. But if you've connected those things together and conflated them in your own conditioning, then that's going to be a painful experience. So I want to ask you to really take mental inventory for a moment here and look at, how has this affected me my whole life? What are some of the costs? And if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat, I would love to hear from you so that we can see this together, right? People can look at the comments and be like, yeah, I've seen these things in my life too. A lot of it is feeling alone, feeling like you may take everything on because you're not allowing yourself to really receive love and connection and support. Sabotaging relationships that might have been healthy for you, pushing people away that you may love and care about. Finding yourself in a situation where you are constantly afraid in relationships and distance from people, and then feel guilty about it or regretful about pushing somebody away so hard or so strongly, or even just feeling exhausted and even burnt out from being on a roller coaster in relationships so often. Now, by the way, as I'm talking about these costs, I'm going to tell you exactly what you can do to get over this in just a moment. But I do want to let you know that if you want to go deeper around attachment styles, intimacy, closeness, both physical, sexual, but emotional intimacy as well, and you want to understand how different attachment styles respond, we have a promotion we're running just for a limited time. And it is the ability for you to go into the personal development school, take a 7-day free trial, but get to keep the attachment styles and intimacy course for life. It talks all about the different attachment styles, their patterns around intimacy, likes, dislikes, preferences, fears, triggers, all of these things. And you will literally get to keep that free course for life. It's valued at $200. So if you want to check that out, along with all other courses at PDS for a limited time, use that link in the description below. And here is what is really important to do. Okay, we're going to go through 3 steps here that are really important to pay attention to. The first step is to make sure that in a relationship, you learn how to communicate your needs and your boundaries. If you don't know how to do that, you're always going to feel like relationships take your freedom, because immediately, if you go into loving somebody and you self-silence and you think that you can't have needs and boundaries, you can't want to do things that make you feel free at the same time. If you just compartmentalize and park that part of yourself away, of course you're going to feel like you lose your freedom. But there's a difference between somebody actively trying to take your freedom from you, or relationships being something that do that, versus you actually taking your freedom from yourself by never advocating for what your feelings, needs, and boundaries are in a relationship. And so underneath this looks like making sure that you start on a daily basis, learning what your needs are. Okay, actually asking yourself, what do I need on a daily basis to feel great in my own life? But what do I also need from a partner? What do I need in a relationship? And checking in and making sure you're communicating these things. I know that feels vulnerable at first, but it's honestly the only way to form a long-standing, healthy relationship that will keep growing. Number 2, after you've really checked in with your needs and boundaries, making sure that you communicate what you need for interdependence. Okay. So if there are things that are important to you, like for example, being able to take a solo trip once a year, or being able to go out with your friends and meet new people from time to time, or go on a trip back home to visit friends or family that you haven't seen in a while. If there are things that are really important to you, you need to decide that these are non-negotiables in a relationship. And you need to be able to say, look, these are things that I'm always going to need. And then you want to, number 3, vet partners accordingly. Choose partners who honor your need for independence, but also want closeness. Choose partners who, when you communicate your need for something, they're going to honor it. They're going to listen to it. They're going to make space for it. Maybe they'll ask you to compromise sometimes. If you say, I'm going to take a solo trip for a month, maybe they're like, hey, do you think you could do it for like 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks instead and not be gone for so long? Maybe there's conversations like that, but overall, there's going to be compromising rather than asking you to sacrifice anything. And the more you're in a position where you treat your feelings, your needs, your boundaries equally to how you treat other people's, and the more that you actually allow yourself to speak for them, advocate for them, vet partners to make sure that you have people who will honor those things, the more you're going to see that freedom and love do not have to be two separate things. Those do not have to be things that pull you in two different directions. In fact, those can be things that go very harmoniously together when you're clear on where you're coming from, what you need, and you vet people accordingly. So that's it for today. I hope this is helpful for you. If you're going through this journey at all, let me know in the comments down below any of the costs that you see in this particular instance. And thank you so much for stopping by and for watching.